Good morning, Oklahoma. Welcome to Cow-Calf Corner. This week, we continue to talk about pasture management, and particularly how do we go about trying to keep the soil, the plants, and the beef production all taking place sustainably over time. I'm fortunate to be joined this morning by my colleague, Dr. Mason Henson. Mason, this one always gets interesting. I always talk about spring fever in the cattle business. We get a little moisture, the photo period extends, we get a little warmth, we see that Bermudagrass and those runners starting to go. Should we be turning in on this immediately at that point?
It is sure tempting. We've got some really beautiful pastures out there. I know yesterday we went out and we're just looking out in our pastures, and I really wanted to get them all out there, but the problem is if we've got them turned out too early, then we're going to potentially hurt later in the season. And that production that comes on then. So it's really best to wait and let that forage start to grow on its own, take advantage of the photosynthesis that we're getting on a beautiful day like this, and let those root reserves start to replenish, because right now that beautiful green up you've got is all coming from that energy that's been storing all through the winter, but that energy was stored in the roots. So all that green up is being pulled from those roots right now, and if we were to hit it right now, then we would be hurting potentially our root growth. And as we get later in the summer, as we inevitably experience some dry periods, then it's not going to have that root structure that can really dive down in the soil profile and be able to get the water that it needs later. That's going to hurt the Bermudagrass performance, so it's best to wait a little bit, wait till you actively see it growing, and then you can go in and graze.
So Mason, we talk about waiting, and we know we got different varieties of Bermudagrass, but in Oklahoma, if we think about the old standard of a Midland Bermudagrass, how big what should we see before we feel good about turning out cattle on it?
Yeah, we don't want to start to graze that Bermudagrass till we're at the 6-inch, maybe 8-inch mark. The best rule that I've heard is if you can see your cow's dew claws, don't turn them out there yet. So let that pasture rest till that has been able to soak up the photosynthesis and you're growing that plant 6, 8, even 10 inches for best performance later in the season.
Maybe a little hard to resist, but long term and later in the summer, we're going to increase our productivity, the amount of beef we take off that per acre. And you know, on this topic, and last week I talked about the relationship of nitrogen fertilizer in Bermuda. Even though we're going to delay turning out on that, it is important that we get that fertilizer, that nitrogen down to capitalize on growing days right now. Do you want to comment on that?
No, I think you're exactly right, and I may go back and comment a little on some of those more improved forage species. If you've got an improved Bermudagrass variety, it might come on a little faster and you can put them on there earlier. But if you do have one that takes a little bit more time, we've still got at our farm, and probably many of the producers around the state are still having some of that ryegrass that's real green and lush right now with all of this rain we've had. And we can take advantage of some of our more spring forages. Maybe you still continue to implement your supplement program for a short period of time to be able to better utilize that Bermudagrass later in the season.
It's a good point. We all want to be done feeding hay.
Yep.
But we're going to be better off over the next few months and really the long term if we can continue with a winter feeding program here for a few more weeks and let that Bermuda get a head start.
That's right.
Yeah. And we'll continue to talk about some other things we might incorporate into pasture management with Dr. Henson in the next couple weeks on SUNUP. But as always, thanks for joining us on Cow-Calf Corner.